Hey guys, what's going on? Matt here with Tomorrow's Filmmakers, and this is the first video of many videos to come on our channel all about photography. For the last 5 years, we've been creating content specifically for filmmaking, but we get asked all the time, what about photography? And so we are excited to announce that we just released our brand new photography cinema course inside Tomorrow's Filmmakers. This course is for anyone wanting to learn the ins and outs to shooting photos, from all the theory, camera settings, weddings, portraits, real estate, concerts, you name it, and we teach it. However, in this video, I want to go over some secret tips and tricks that you need to know whether you're someone who's pretty far along in your photography career or even if you're just getting started. I'm going to go over 10 secrets that I have learned in my journey as a photographer and how each of these have dramatically improved my work over the last couple of years. These 10 things may very well be the only differences between being an okay photographer and a great one. Some of these might sound a little bit obvious, but even if you're a seasoned photographer, stick around anyways because I think there's something in this video for everyone. Secret tip number 1 is for you to know your gear. And no, I didn't say have the best gear. We as photographers really need to step out of this mindset of always needing to have the best camera and lenses and instead really focus and dial in on the gear we already have. I shoot on a few expensive cameras now, but it didn't start that way. For like 2 years, I was using my dad's old Nikon D40 just simply because it was all I had. I remember being on vacation, Googling Nikon D40, why is my picture black? Because I was trying to take a picture of the sunset out on the beach and I couldn't get it to look the way I wanted it to. No matter what camera brand you're starting out with, it is crucial that you learn the basic settings so that you can have full control of your craft and actually get those ideas out of your head and put into action. If not knowing what shutter speed is stopping you from learning and growing, change that. Learn how to dial it in. We have a video on our channel called Master Your Camera in 20 Minutes that will show you all the settings you need to know in order to properly run your camera. Secret number 2 is depth. This is something that not a lot of photographers talk about, and it's simply one of the best ways to make your photos stand out from the rest of the competition. Shooting with depth in mind can help you stop taking photos like this and start taking more photos like this. By separating your subject from your background, you're able to really be creative and make your photos pop. You can achieve this by creating distance between your subject and your background, or even by taking full advantage of your foreground and background of your image. Want to add depth to a portrait? Have your model pose reaching towards the camera. When taking pictures, try to find ways to add more depth into your image. Shoot over someone's shoulder, maybe shoot through some bushes or plants. Try to get as creative as possible with this. Notice how I didn't even mention aperture yet? That's because depth is so much more than just lowering your f-stop down to 1.2 and firing away. Now, sure, you could spend $1,200 on the Canon L series 50mm f1.2, but what will that help you if you don't know how to physically create depth in your image first? Again, it's so much more than what gear you have, but more importantly, how you use it. For example, this picture looks fine, and many beginner photographers would be satisfied with this image. But by shooting through these leaves, we add an entirely new dimension to our image, and ours will stand out from all the rest. So, add depth to your image by creating it yourself. The third secret tip is hugely important, and that is lighting. Bad lighting can seriously make or break your image like nothing else. You could have the best looking model or the best and most beautiful background in the world, but shoot with bad lighting and you'll totally ruin your photos. You're going to want to always make lighting a priority. Whether you're shooting inside or outside, this is definitely always something to think about. Try to always avoid what we call in the photography world raccoon eyes. This is just what happens when you take a photo of someone with the light source directly above them, like shooting outside on a sunny day around noon, for example. This is just a super unflattering look and can instantly ruin your photo. You can have all of your settings dialed in, even create perfect depth, but then the light hitting your subject is bad, and so now your image is ruined. When shooting outside and using the sun as your main light source, always try to go shoot during that 2-hour time period before sunset. Not quite golden hour, but start an hour before that. You'll typically get nice, even light, and you'll also be able to find shade in a bunch of places, which will be super helpful. Shooting in the shade is a great way to have nice and even light in your image. Bonus points if you can go out and shoot on a cloudy day, because in this scenario, the cloud cover will actually be acting as a continuous diffuser of the sun, giving you shade practically everywhere you go. But If the sun is out and there is no shade, at least put the sun behind your subject. You don't want your subject squinting, and this can also give them a really flattering glow around our subject that makes them stand out. Of course, if you want to learn more about lighting and shooting with artificial light, I would encourage you to check out our video on 8 steps to cinematic lighting. That video is geared more towards videography rather than photography, but I still think it would be a super helpful tool for you to get a basic idea on how to light your subject. Next up on our list of secrets is number 4, composition, or in other words, making your photos appear more pleasing to the eye. What makes this photo look weird? Well, it looks like I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't follow any of the basic rules of composition. First rule is, of course, the rule of thirds. Knowing when and how to follow as well as break this rule is crucial. Rule of thirds basically just means there is an imaginary grid that goes on top of your image, and the main goal is to have any main subject in your image fall onto an intersecting point on this grid. Now, why did that photo I just showed you look a little bit off? Well, because the subject is nowhere near any of these intersecting points. In fact, he's not even close. Taking the rule of thirds into account, I would shoot more like this, and now already just see how much better this looks. Of course, you can always break this rule and just put your subject in the middle of the frame, but only do it if there's an intention behind it. You should always have a main subject in your frame, and composition should always make your subject stand out. If someone looks at this image, they aren't quite sure what the subject is. Is it a tree? This building? A bench? What's the main subject? Well, the main subject is the person sitting on this bench. Now, how do we use composition to make your subject stand out? Maybe use the road or sidewalk as leading lines to guide the viewer's eyes to the subject. We can reframe to remove all of this dead space around our image. We can then use the rule of thirds to make our subject the main focus, and maybe even add some depth by shooting through a tree branch. All of this was done by using composition to make our subject, well, the subject, use composition to aid to your storytelling. Now, the next secret on this list is something that I don't see a lot of people talk about, which is crazy given their importance, and these are poses. When shooting anything at all, you're going to want to always make sure your subject looks the best they possibly can. Whether it's a bride at a wedding, or a model representing a clothing brand, or just simply a friend you're doing portraits with, try to find and think of flattering poses that are not only visually appealing, but also make your subject or model feel more confident in front of the camera. Personally, I never try to shoot up at any model because 1, you just look like a weirdo, and 2, nobody wants a double chin in their image. Even people that might not normally have a double chin might appear to have one if you're shooting at the wrong angles. I try to always incorporate movement in my poses, such as asking a guy to adjust his watch or his outfit, or asking a girl to play with her hair. Anything that might add movement and dynamic to my image and not come across boring. Of course, stationary shots are cool, and you can always have your subject sit still or stand still, but I encourage you to get a little more creative with these poses, maybe even go look on Google or Instagram for some inspiration. If there is a pose that I just really like, I'll even screenshot it and show it to the couple. There's no shame in saying, hey, let's try this pose. It's much easier for them to see the pose than for you to try to explain it to them. Go on Google, search for poses, save them on your phone, and show them to your subjects while on your shoot. Another way to make your photos stand out above the rest, and this is so important, but you've got to find emotion. Now, of course, this all depends on what you're shooting. Sometimes it's easy to find emotion and capture it, like at a concert or at a wedding. Other times you might need to create this emotion in your image by telling your subject to do something. At a concert, the artist on stage is probably already putting on a show, and so it's easy to capture their emotion, as they're making it pretty obvious because they're the artist at the show. Where it might get tricky is if you go out into the crowd for some crowd shots. Finding that person in the audience of 3,000 people who's laughing or crying might be a little bit more difficult. However, these are the timeless photos that people will treasure forever. I'm talking about a parent's reaction during a wedding ceremony, a person crying in the audience of a worship event, anything like that. When it comes to portraits, finding or creating that emotion will make your photos feel really more impactful, and this is something that you'll see a lot from professionals versus the beginner photographers. There have been countless times where I was taking photos of a bride and groom, and honestly they were tired, emotional from the long day, and just kept asking me, what do you want us to do? Now me, as the photographer, could easily just go on Google and show them some poses like we just talked about, or I could get creative and try to create some natural emotion. For example, sometimes I'll ask the groom to whisper something in the bride's ear that'll make her laugh. I'm creating that moment for them to have an emotional response. The groom will probably whisper something inappropriate or maybe an inside joke, and then boom, I'm getting a photo of them both laughing naturally. I'm not just having to show them a picture on my iPhone and say, hey, you see this couple? They're laughing. Can you do that too? In that moment, I'm actually able to capture a naturally emotional response. Adding movement like walking, tickling, maybe throwing the groom up into the air, anything to generate real emotion that isn't faked. This next secret tip has less to do with photography and more to do with your mindset, and that is consistency. Never let too long of a time period go by without feeding your creative spirit. It's easy to get busy and lose track of time with your daily life, job, family responsibilities, and trust me, all of those things are great, but if you have a real passion for photography or creating something, don't let it fade away. Making it a priority to go out and have at least one scheduled photo shoot a week or a month, whatever that looks like for you, will help you keep growing and learning about your craft. This can be said about really anything you put your mind to, but especially in the creative field where people are always out there shooting and you're consistently seeing other people's photos on Instagram and other social media, and you've got to find a way to be confident in your own work without killing your mind by constant comparison. Seeing other people's work online should only want to make you go out and shoot more of your own stuff. A huge problem for me when I was first getting started is that I was constantly getting dragged down by seeing other people's beautiful work and wondering why mine wasn't as good. There were multiple times where I just stopped shooting for any given time period because I simply just didn't have the motivation. These breaks from my passion set me back and made me not want to even go out and shoot when I actually did have a shoot to go to. So, if you're taking a break from your photography work, don't break for too long. Maybe find another way to be creative during your break and learn some more skills. Try to learn Photoshop. Maybe even record some video and learn about that. The main takeaway is to remain consistent in what you really care about, put focus into it, and try not to discourage yourself by comparing your work to other people's work. And on that same topic of seeing other people's work, this next secret is super important, and that is learn the best ways of showcasing your art. This can be through social media, building a website or a portfolio, or even word of mouth. The biggest and best way to showcase your work is through the use of social media. If you're a photographer like me, you already know how Instagram is probably the best platform at the moment for sharing still images, and you can get super creative with how you go about posting onto your feed, stories, and all that fun stuff. Posting high quality photos and also being relatively consistent in when you post will really help you extend your reach. In addition, you can even pay for Instagram ads that will specifically target those people you're wanting to reach. You could spend $5 a day for 30 days, totaling out at $150, and Instagram will tell you approximately how many people your post will be shown to. This is super helpful if you're wanting to book weddings but don't know where to find clients. Having a website is also a really important way to showcase your work and make it easier for potential clients to book you. Having a connect page on your website makes it super easy for clients to get a hold of you and book you for future projects. Also, it's okay to post personal, non-work related things on your social media, such as going to get coffee or hanging with friends. Just be sure to try to find a balance for it. You want people to know that you're a human and have a life outside of being a content creator, so try to find the right balance for you. I know some people that have 2 separate accounts on social media, one for their daily life and one for their professional life. If that makes the most sense to you, go for it. However, I've found in my journey that I prefer to keep everything in one place rather than splitting it all up. People don't always like to follow multiple accounts that are ran by the same person, so just keep that in mind and do what's best for you. In addition to showcasing your art, one of the best ways to help do this and also build a brand for yourself is the way that you edit. This is something that has taken me years to get a handle on, and honestly I'm still learning and growing every single day, but having a style, as they call it, is super important. The goal is that someone who follows me on social media sees my post and without even seeing my name thinks, oh, this looks like a Matt Huffman photo. This means you've done it. You have a style that is so you that people associate the edit and photo style with the rest of your work and can tell that it's your photo. There's probably like 5 or 6 photographers that I follow and whose work I love so much, and if you were to put them in a gallery, one photo from each of them, I could probably confidently tell you which photo is from which photographer. This is simply because they each have their own unique style and look in their edit. There's many ways to go about creating a style for yourself, and honestly, this isn't something that I can just teach you. but instead it's one of those things you just have to develop over time. Try purchasing Lightroom presets from a photographer whose work you admire, take those same presets and put them into Lightroom and tweak them a bunch until you've made something of your own. This just takes time, and eventually you'll grow to like a certain color scheme or a certain look, and that way when people see it, they'll already know that it's your photo and that you took it. And lastly, arguably one of the most important ways for you to grow in your craft is by education. And no, I don't mean go to college for photography or filmmaking, none of that. Of course, college is great, and if you have all the time and money for it, be my guest. But for me, I started learning about photography when I was just 14 years old and didn't have any interest in going to more schooling after I finished high school. I knew I wanted to pursue something in the creative field, but didn't know exactly what or how I was going to do it. There were many late nights where I stayed up Googling questions, looking for answers about my cameras, lenses, and all the technical stuff that made photography feel less like a creative outlet and more like a math assignment. I was constantly getting confused why my photos weren't looking as good as I wanted them to, but didn't know why or how to get any better. I was spending so much of my time scrolling through Google and YouTube looking for answers, and so much money buying new gear that I barely knew how to use. There were so many online photography courses that costed over $500, and so I just stuck with YouTube and Google as my instructor, which only led me to be more confused, and so many different people were teaching things in so many different ways. Learning the proper way to be a professional photographer is something you can't put a price on, and it's also something we never do because the price of an online course is just so expensive. This is why at tomorrowsfilmmakers.com, we have decided to sell our $800 award-winning online film course for only $97. I wish I had something like this when I was starting out so that I wouldn't have wasted so much of my time learning from so many different people and so many differing opinions. We have over 1,000 training videos and over 100 hours of content on every single aspect of filmmaking and photography you can possibly imagine, all at an extremely affordable price of only $97. If you're falling in love with photography or wanting to learn more, you're in the right place. I hope this video has been super helpful for you and that you've learned something that you can take with you and walk into your next shoot more confidently. Take these 10 steps, put them into practice immediately, and you will be shocked at the image you just took the next time you look at the back of your camera. So, if you'd like to learn even more and take your photography career to the next level, click the link below and head on over to tomorrowsfilmmakers.com to learn all the skills that you need to succeed.